Well, hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Ascension Playground. This is your friend Ursie, and thank you for joining me for this very deep dive into Tarot, the cards which we can buy in Amazon or the store, and yet we find that the words, a picture book of wisdom, is carried energetically within the first 22 major arcana. So if you're new to this conversation, just know that the word arcana means secret or mystery. So the first 22 are basically in this little mandala behind me. And it's something that Dr. Theresa Bullard on GaiaTV suggested were the 22 pathways for our multi-dimensional selves. So we can understand ourselves much more fully, not just in this one earthly lifetime, not just in past lifetimes only on earth, but in a broader sense of the multi-dimensional. I was so curious, and yet this rang a bell within my very core. So today I'd like to talk with you a little bit about my journey with the third card in the deck, number 2, which is the High Priestess. So for many of you, if you're like me, the High Priestess, it was a little bit hard to understand. Yes, it's this idea of perhaps sanctuary or set apart, or the intuitive, reflective, feminine self. But there's so much more. When you look at these 22 major arcana as basically, again, a picture book of wisdom, this wisdom does not sit just on the surface. It's something where, I don't know, I've just been percolating and letting myself dream or watch the synchronicities, the books, the people, the programs that come forward. And there is so much to the High Priestess. So right above me, you can see we started with the Fool. Now this card is the number 0. Other people who work with the tarot sometimes set the 0 aside and they start with number 1, which is the Magician. This is the card I'm pointing to. So the Magician starts off with this idea of the solar light, the masculine, who's going to work with the 4 elements, earth, air, fire, water, and add in that 5th element of ether. This is the idea of pushing outward, whereas the beautiful High Priestess carries the energetic of the moon. This is all about reflected light. So for me, it's like, hello, Priestess, High Priestess. Again, it's not necessarily the mundane um, label of one who actually sits in a temple and works with the sacred. It's a higher level of awareness. So I'm tracking to see, as I focus on each of the major arcana, is there a particular galactic story that is also threaded in each of the 22 that wants to come back into the now moment of 2023. So here we go. I've got a little slideshow to share about the High Priestess. But as I do this, I'm finding that nothing is done singularly. It's almost like you can't just take a piece out without it not connecting with the greater whole. So, yes, a picture book of wisdom. Now, this wisdom is definitely looking at the lunar, the moon, a lunar cycle. Interesting, raised in the United States, living in the United States, we work with a Gregorian calendar of the sun, right? Solar light. In many Asian cultures, they're working with the lunar year, the lunar new year of the 13 moon cycles within. This is how they track time. So I'm welcoming in the High Priestess. Share us more about your wisdom of reflecting light. Our culture here in America is so much more about the masculine. Go out and create, make it happen, set this up, have a goal, drive it down the court, put the ball in the basket. This is not the energy when you really look into tuning into the high priestess. In fact, it's the equal and opposite, that hermetic principle, right? The equal and opposite. So, as much as the masculine energy thrusts outward, the feminine goes inward. For those of you who have studied galactic astrology, you'll know the story of Lyra and the Lyra constellation is one where there were Lyrans who were very much aligned with the masculine principle. Let's go out and colonize. There's a subset from on Lyra, the Vega star system. So the Vegans would be much more about all the answers are within myself. So again, tracking the galactic heritage and the stories of the stars to see if they also resonate within the 22 major arcana. Let's find out. Let's play. Okay, so here we see the high priestess. We're opening up the picture book of wisdom and we are saying, yes, thank you. Show me more. Reveal that which is already now coming back into the collective field to be brought down and placed into our awareness. Okay, so calling it in with a very open, heart-centered intention. The picture next to the high priestess is basically to remind myself about, yes, sit still, tune into this, feel into it, turn off all the technology, turn off this YouTube channel, tune into that cosmic awareness. It's really the only way. These keys are available, but when you take a key and unlock that particular door or portal or Stargate portal, imagine what might flood in. And this is what seems to be happening to me when I'm going around this wheel now of the 22 major arcana. The high priestess has come in, and I've allowed myself to as much time as she needs, as much time as I need to help really raise my vibration and bring this awareness down for my own edification, but also, if you're still listening on the playground, for those who also want to track this as well to see if it rings true for you as well. Okay, so my next little slide, here we go. So where on the mandala does the high priestess sit, according again to Theresa Bullard? We started with 0, the Fool. This is the limitless potential, the new soul, making an agreement to say, yes, I want to incarnate into this third dimensional system. The potential for all that is, the Fool, limitless potential. Then the second card, the Magician, with the infinity sign above his head, with an Ouroboros snake for a belt. So it's this idea of how to work alchemically. How do we create magic, working with all the elements, focusing on an outward focused intention to manifest. Now we have in the third position, the high priestess, which is the number 2 card in tarot. So do you get it? We start with 0, then 1, then 2. Here we go. And I put this little baby representing the eternal child, us. So when I put those 3 cards together, I just kept going back over and over to this idea of the divine Trinity. And if you want to take a look at my previous YouTube little sharings on the Fool or the Magician, you'll see that, especially in the Magician, this idea of the Trinity, the 3, the equal and opposites finding each other, that duality. But when they come, they don't actually necessarily have to go in like this, the duality, to meet in the middle. They could also meet at the apex, which forms this beautiful triune. So growing up in the culture of the Catholic faith or Christianity, we learned about Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. It's like, where's Mary? So it's this idea of the triune, and the Holy Spirit, I believe, was to represent the eternal feminine. So here we see the position, though, of the priestess. She is bookended by the Magician on one side, but right next to her is the Empress, We haven't talked about her yet, but for me, when I see the high priestess who's working much more with the heavens, with the celestial realms of this sacred connection to all that is. Oftentimes, the high priestesses were set apart in societies. They were not allowed to marry, to have sex, to have children. They were devoted to the goddess or to their specific focused intention, right? But it's set apart from the civilization. Whereas the empress who sits next to her, interesting that it's not the emperor first, right? It's the empress. So this empress is bookending her for the mundane world, for life more in the everyday world. Okay, so again, she's got the magician, here's alchemy, here's outward expression, and then the high priestess on her other side has the feminine queen next to her, right? So we're just trying to see if we can sort this 22 pathways going forward. Here I just put 3 icons of, again, the top is the Fool at the apex. Here we've got the magician and the high priestess as a masculine and the feminine, creating and holding space for the divine child, the Fool. The Fool is a very interesting name because it says you're out of your mind. Well, a child does not know necessarily what is of the collective, right? It's innocence. It's here I am. I'm just radiating light. It's just me being me without all those layers of social constrictions, how to be in society. All right. And I brought in the yin yang, this idea of balancing energies. Okay. So it's not necessarily just one center point, but there's two, right? Within the dark and the light. I don't know. I just like to play with these pictures and tease out, what are you here to try and tell me? The high priestess, again, this idea of reflective light. You see, she's got a moon at her feet. She's got a full moon or crescent moon at her feet, and she has a full moon at her head. And that headgear with these like 2 horns sticking out. Very interesting, right? We have seen that headdress before, and I'm going to share more about that later. This is also this idea of inward intuition, the psyche, the subconscious. I mean, interesting, right? You have the psychoanalysis, this idea of focusing in on the dream time, that which is not seen in the visible world, but it's what is in the unseen realms that the high priestess holds. I love that. What is it that I know is there, but I cannot see it? Like, can you see gravity? Can you really see air? Can you see an electron, a neutron? You know, can you see it without assistance from microscopes, in other words, right? So the unseen realms is what is the basically the playground for the high priestess. She's night, she's yin energy, she is mother, the mother of the sky, the cosmos. Let's just call her even maybe the womb, the great cosmic womb, the creation, the potential, that which is internal, unseen, right? So it's interesting, what stays out in the light of day has an equal and opposite what is below ground. The beautiful thing with astrology is when you start learning about the hemispheres and the quadrants, we see what is above that shines in the light and what is below. And so it's interesting to see where your clusters of planets or engagement of aspects, that sacred geometry in your astrology. Are you working more above in the solar light? Let's call it the magician, where magic happens outside. Or are you working with your astrology below in the lower hemisphere of the night realms? Nothing to be afraid of. It's just equal and opposite masculine and feminine forces of energy. All right, so look who came in. I had several people, a couple new to me, start just randomly talking about Isis. Isis. Yes, Isis for me is somehow connected to the high priestess. Now, if you think about it, we like to talk about Osiris, how he came back from basically being chopped up by his brother and came back to life to birth their child Horus. But it was Isis who understood the secrets of alchemy to put Osiris back together again. Thousands of years ago, it was the matriarchal societies, right? It is the mother, the feminine principle that basically gives birth to life. Birth to life, birth being held within, not sitting outside the body, it's within the mother form. So, too, this idea of Isis coming forward, understanding magic. So, I don't put her below the magician. I think she works her magic in the unseen realms, and they have equivalent status. The masculine is not above the feminine. No, in fact, it was the feminine that was celebrated as the entity that could bring life into the third dimension. Because imagine that if you can't give birth, animal, plant, human, you have no culture going forward, you have no civilization. And I know that that has happened in some of the galactic heritage, some of the stories that we learned through Lisa Royal Holt, is why in a society, let's say like the Zeta Reticulum, they chose to get rid of their emotional sensitivities and really instead just focused on the technology, thinking that would fine tune their civilization. They could extend themselves and they could go and colonize into the other galaxies. But they forgot this important component of replication, replicate, basically giving birth to your own, right? So anyway, so that story is in the stars as well, is what I'm saying, and how important the matriarch comes forward through this beautiful high priestess card. So when I think of Isis, the high priestess is not necessarily in servitude to a goddess, but when we embrace that high priestess within us, we can embody all the favorable aspects of the goddess herself, Isis. Now, I did look into this idea of, is the high priestess Nut, N-U-T, the sky goddess, who married Geb, the earth. So when sky, Nut, and Geb, earth, married, they brought forth Isis as one of their children. And so it felt more already in this dimensional, third dimensional play that perhaps I saw more of Isis connecting with the high priestess. Okay, again, her mother being the night sky Nut. Now, I just want to bring this back up. This image is the tree of life. Okay, if you go and study the Kabbalah or Kabbalah, there are these sephirots, these basically spheres of the pathway of the hero's journey. Now, when Theresa Bullard talks about this, she says this is not necessarily written into Kabbalah, but she saw that the pathways between the circles or the spheres there's 22 that she says mirrors the major arcana, the 22 pathways of the tree of life. So you can see I put a purple circle, I drew it in. That is where the high priestess pathway sits, between understanding and wisdom. Isn't that interesting? It's not coming from the crown chakra, it's not the head. It's coming laterally or horizontally of understanding and wisdom. This is going internal. This is intuitive insights. All right, had to bring back these fun pictures. So understanding Bina to wisdom Chokma. So here we see the feminine coming forward in the tree of life as a pathway. So thank you, High Priestess. Tell us more. Now, there's a flame letter for of the Hebrew flame letters for each of the 22 major arcana. The one that's in yellow at the corner is Gimel. And so that is the beautiful glyph for the high priestess. And this card is also connected to the moon. So it's the moon for Earth. And in previous tarot decks throughout the years, another name for the high priestess for this card was the popess. So instead of the Hierophant or Pope, she was the equal and opposite, the popess. She was also called the female questioner. I can totally relate to that. And also, interestingly, and I don't know what this means exactly, the gate of the occult sanctuary. So when I tune into that word occult, knowing it's that which is hidden, mysterious, mystery, occult, sanctuary, sanctuary to sit with that which is the unknowable, knowable, the unseen realms. So thank you for sharing that with me, High Priestess. Here's an image for Isis. You can see she's holding the Ankh, the key of everlasting life. And on top of her head is a star, which points to the heavens, her mother, the night, Nut. Okay, so Isis, the brightest light in our constellation that we can see from Earth, is the star Sirius A. When I talked about the magician, I was talking about the people in Africa who were saying that's where we're from, but they were pointing to Sirius B, a small little dwarf star that you can't even see with the naked eye, but they were saying that's where we're from. And now I'm looking at Isis and connecting this energy of the high priestess with Sirius A, the brightest star in all the heavens. Why not give it to the high priestess? She is celestial, she is bright. And yes, we know she's connected to the moon, bringing us into like this connection to the earth. But I do see her instead as the brightest shining star in the heavens. Now, just for those of you who are new to tarot and just want a little bit of a glimpse of what does the symbology mean, her message, according to this deck, is saying that if you pull the High Priestess card and you're trying to understand and ask a question, trust your own counsel first. So when you ask a question, turn that around into the mirror and say, asking yourself, and then finding out, oh, how did that land? Where in your body did the answer show up? Was it your gut? Was it your heart? Were you fearful? How did it feel? So the high priestess is always saying, ask your question to yourself first, because when we start learning how to read our energy, we know that we carry all the answers that we have questions for if we pay attention. So you can see she's got two columns next to her. She's seated in this kind of like a little, she's got the pomegranate plants behind her. They look like Corinthian columns coming out, the crescent moon at her feet. She's holding a book called Torah, T-O-R-A. I remember hearing someone switching the letters around saying it actually could spell tarot, you know. So if you go T-A-R-O and then T when you come back around, interesting. If she is holding the full book of wisdom in her lap, the 22 picture book of wisdom sitting there, and then some, we say, okay, high priestess, you've got this wonderful cruciform. This cross is not the cross of Christ. The cross that's at her heart is the cross of spirit coming into this third dimensional aspect of matter. So where spirit comes into matter is where you have this equilateral cross. So beautiful. And then you have her in robes of blue, which speak to, yes, I love Mother Mary, which is always associated in painting with that beautiful blue, but strength, intuition, clear thinking. And so yellow, clarity, enlightenment, white for innocence and purity, and then red for adventure, danger, or passion. So whenever I see pomegranates, I go right away to that myth of um, Demeter and her daughter Persephone, who was abducted and taken into hell to hate by Hades. So this idea of the pomegranate being basically a shape for the divine feminine, the seeds of fertility, the fruit of life. In fact, now on this page, you can see the cross. Well, this one says the cross is focusing on inner beliefs, values, and goals, but they made the cross look more like a Christian cross. If you look at her breastplate, it is equilateral. But I want to go back to her crown, her moon crown. This is about confidence and action, you know. So imagine if you were wearing this moon crown. And I'm going to suggest, if you haven't figured out your tarot cards for the major arcana with that correlate to your special birth date, go ahead and Google, just write in calculator tarot birth cards. There's several out there. You just place in your information and boom, you'll get 2 and sometimes 3 cards. If you get the High Priestess, just know that this energy is waiting for you to open it and let it reveal itself to you. All right. So coming back onto Earth, when we read it like, okay, this card carries the moon energy, and we just say it's our moon, even though, gosh, there's so many moons out there, right? There's so many planets and stars. So this idea of who is the moon goddess in Greek and Roman mythology? Well, her name is Selene. So you can see she's got that little crescent moon. They're not horns. It's like a little moon on the top of her head. So Selene, goddess of the moon. So if you feel like you rock with her more with the High Priestess, embrace her. For me, it was Isis. So I'll say Isis in the heavens and then Selene more in the day to day. You could bring in both Isis and Selene into your meditations. Then I found this little interesting image with, let's see, from Magical Mooney's Sanctuary by Lady Zazu. Selene, Selene, beautiful light, I invoke thee humbly on this night. Aid me in my work so true, so I can dance and honor you. O goddess Selene of the moon, I will chant a happy tune. To your presence ever so sweet, your moonlight I will happily greet. Blessed be. And I know on our society, we get a little nervous, some of us, when we see the 5-pointed star. Believe me, the 5-pointed star is connected to Venus, to the divine feminine, to Hathor energy. So, not to fear. Yes, it's used in magic and ritual, but not just for negative practices. They took something so beautiful and turned it into a negative feminine image, but the 5-pointed star is the pentagon. So I'll leave it there. But here, in case you wanted to see our whole solar system, look at where the moon of Earth lands. I mean, look at the heavens. We have the sun, we have Mercury that is connected to the magician card in the tarot, we have Venus, now we have the Earth. But it's interesting that the Earth it's not connected to the High Priestess, it is her moon, Selene, Isis. Okay, so I just had to put that to give us a bigger perspective. So, yep, there is the moon to planet Earth in relationship to all the other planets in our solar system. So, from an astrological perspective, the moon is the ruler of the sign of Cancer in astrology. Okay, Cancer is the crab. Cancer carries its back with it. It's a great nurturer, it's great mother energy. It rules the fourth house. And interesting, right? The fourth house of our psychological foundations, right? So when we say home, are we really referring to what roots us psychologically? You know, this is something that we don't usually think about. We think like, okay, what's in front of us? Answer, no answer, whatever. It's not here, but our underpinning, it's the subconscious. It's very Jungian with who is driving our ship when we make decisions. And when we look, some people say it's like 70% of all of our decision making is made on a subconscious level. So psychological foundations play a key to how we make decisions in love or fear. Okay. Reflected light, though. I read something else where it said that the moon reflects all the light of all the stars near it. So it is more powerful than just a small little thing that orbits Earth. It's very mysterious. We never see the backside of the moon. I know that there's some conspiracy theorists who say, oh, there's lots of things that we don't want to know about on the backside of the moon. Doesn't matter. It's fascinating, though, that the moon works with Earth to help create our tides. It pulls upon our cycles of Earth and body. So fascinating. And here is the high priestess carrying that moon energy. So I'm almost going to wrap up. I'm going to just share the next one I'll do is going in deeper. I just went ahead and I just said, okay, show me Isis, Sirius A. Is that the connection to the high priestess? Let's see. So we will track more possible galactic connections. I'll just wrap up by saying it's fascinating, all of this. I have had some kind of epiphany while I'm just traveling through the arcana. You might see me wearing this almost every time you see me on the YouTube, only because it feels like it's part of my personality. It is an early sign of Venus, but you can see it looks closer to like the Ankh, um, the key of life. But for me, it represents a sense of knowingness of the divine feminine principle that I'm here to kind of help hold in my heart and bring outward on the playground. When I set this channel up with friends, I never imagined going so deeply into material. But here we go. Oh, I wanted to share this too. Look at the sacred Trinity. I'll put it right next to my throat here. This idea of speaking truth from my masculine energy, my feminine energy, and culminating with an apex point of my own divine inner child. Each of us has one. Okay. And so it's this idea of just playing with the energy, playing with the metaphors, playing with the stories and the visuals. Because I believe through play, we just say, I don't have to take it so seriously. I can just see what shows up. And if the universe responds by closing the doors, so be it. If the universe responds by everything opening up and it just going to the next level, wonderful. So that's just kind of sharing some personal things about me. Oh, I'm also wearing some earrings of the Vesica. This is the mandorla shape of the portal from which all living beings, all 5 platonic solids go through the mandorla, the Vesica piscis. Okay, that is way, way a lot for you to take in. Thank you for staying this long. I'll see you next time on the Ascension Playground. Bye, everybody, and have a blessed day.